Realistically think Perplexity should be replacing Google. You know what I mean? For a lot of people, like when managing people, I would be like, hey, did you Google this before you came into my office and asked me?
Yeah.
Right? It should be like, hey, did you ask AI? Did you chat back and forth with AI about this before you kind of presented this problem or came into the office? Right? So I think that's kind of the cultural small way. I would say, I need to write a company handbook or something, right? That is like something that would be so easy for AI to do. But if you were sat someone down and said, do this, it may take them like, a couple days to write a full handbook. It's like, hey, write me a handbook. Hey, write this, draft LOI agreement.
Welcome to the H-Files, the new series of the Hands-On Business podcast, where we dive deep into the world of healthcare leadership and the unique challenges facing small to medium-sized healthcare businesses. I'm Hakeem Adebiyi, and after years of helping businesses grow in various industries, I'm excited to focus on the area that I know the best, healthcare, one of the most dynamic and impactful sectors in the world today. In this series, we're going to explore what it takes to lead and grow in healthcare, from navigating the complexities of regulation and innovation to overcoming the everyday hurdles of building a sustainable business in this fast-paced environment. Each episode will feature real-world insights, expert interviews, and actionable strategies that can help you push your healthcare business forward. So whether you're a leader in the space or an entrepreneur ready to break into it, the H-Files is here to give you the edge. Not that long ago, a surgeon reviewed some data from a recent operation, not from memory or notes, but through an AI-powered platform. And the system flagged moments in the procedure where performance could be improved, tiny lapses like unintended tissue contact or suboptimal instrument placement. Insights that could have and would have probably been lost in a standard post-op review were now guiding better technique, reducing future risk, and ultimately improving outcomes. And that story stuck with me for several reasons, mainly because this is one of several examples that I could have used. And it's not the future, it's actually happening now. And it signals a new era where intelligence isn't just artificial. It's assistive, it's predictive, and it's potentially life-saving. So today on the H-Files, we're diving into this transformation with someone who knows this space quite in depth, and that's Spencer Jones, Medtech entrepreneur. He's obviously been on the show before. So if you haven't seen that episode, go back and check that out, which was on the common Medtech growth challenges and how to overcome them. That's a great episode. Got some really good feedback on that. And Spencer has been at the intersection of medtech and innovation for many, many years. And today we're talking about how AI is changing how we build medtech and changing how we build medtech businesses from the ground up. So welcome, Spencer.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this. I've been just getting deeper and deeper into kind of the AI space and love any chance that I get to talk about it. So thanks for having me back again.
No, my pleasure. I mean, we talked a bit earlier in the week, or was it last week? I can't remember. Every day merges into one. But I'm really into AI. But compared to you, I'm scratching the surface. So it was a really great opportunity. So let's start with the big picture. AI is transforming medtech. But from your point of view, how do you see it fundamentally transforming the medtech space and the landscape in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say I'll start kind of on the almost like patient care side to a degree. We have a pretty big shortage of physicians and clinicians across the board in a lot of ways, but especially physicians. Like if you look at, what the projected needs are going to be in terms of the workforce and all of that, right? And so I think one of the biggest ways over really the next 3 to 5 years is being able to kind of increase the leverage that one physician or one clinician can do, right? So I think imaging is a great example, right? Like you've got a radiologist that, can currently, right, with the current workflow and the current way that they're doing it, review, X number of x-rays or X number of, kind of DICOM imaging files in an hour, right? Well, if AI could double that or triple that, right, that makes them way more effective, way more throughput. I think the same thing could be said with robotically enabled procedures. Hip and knee have been doing that. They're getting more prevalent in spine. And so I think that's one of the biggest ways I see. It's going to just make the direct patient care work better, work faster. And then, like you said, be a lot safer, right? There's going to be some safeguards and some fail safes. I think one other thing the next piece, which is kind of more like infrastructural for health systems and healthcare. One thing that AI is very good at, and especially with the advent of MCPs or like model context protocols, we could talk about that more in a bit, but they're really good at kind of talking to each other and integrating disparate elements of data. And, healthcare has tons of that, right? It's just like mess and messes of data, and there's this standard and that standard. And so I think that's one thing that AI is going to be able to do, is to be able to kind of create more interoperability through using kind of agent and AI driven kind of integrations, those MCPs that can kind of sit in between data sets and then really help kind of clean and marry things up. Like most people are familiar with APIs, and MCPs are almost like APIs for large language models, for AI. You see what I'm saying? So you're not having to build these custom integrations every time you need to go get this Epic data or integrate it with Mercy's MyChart system or whatever. You can have these kind of LLM layers that sit and then use MCPs to kind of communicate back and forth. So I think that will help with interoperability a lot. And I also think it will also help with the delivery of kind of point solutions. So think like EHR systems, massive, that's the opposite. It's kind of legacy. That's your NetSuites, that's your all that, right? So I think like it's very, very difficult for digital health companies to come into large, complex health systems and say, hey, we want to solve this pain point. And it's like, are you going to integrate with all of our stuff and our ERP and all of this? And it's just like too big of a task to bear a lot of the time. So I think AI will help make those kind of the implementation and deployment of those point solutions a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the keys, isn't it? And what you said at the beginning is almost the advantage of AI, but also what frightens people, because what you're saying is one person can do a lot more than they could have in the past. So that then leads you on to the next one is, okay, so how are people right to be afraid that they're going to lose their jobs? Because that's always the thing. Oh, AI I'm going to lose my job. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I mean, honestly, this is, I feel like this conversation's probably had every 20 years, 30 years, people that were doing oil lamps and doing all the wagon wheel companies, and back when wagons, and then they looked at cars, right? And oil lamps and incandescent light bulbs and like all of that stuff, right? So I'm seeing this as, I'm sure there were typewriter people out there that were like, man, Microsoft Word, the computer, this is going to kill us, right? And then those people pivoted into, doing something else, something that builds on their skill set. So I see it. I also think the other thing is people, you say you're really interested in AI and you feel like you're scratching the surface compared to me. I feel like I'm scratching the surface compared to some of the people that I'm like in these circles with. So there's so many layers to it. And as fast as everybody like thinks and believes things get kind of uptaken into like the broad culture, into the broad workforce, etc., it's like really, really slow. Like there's so many solutions out there look how many people still have cable. Look how, half of websites are still on WordPress, because it's easy, because it's not, you don't have to be that technically savvy to do it, and it's easy. And there's all kinds of low code and no code and development solutions out there to deploy your website, but people go with what's easy and what's like low tech. So I'm not overly concerned about it being a massive upheaval to the workforce. I personally, but I also think like if you're not figuring out how to use AI in your business, you are just like day by day falling behind because your competitor probably is.
No, and that's 100%. And as you were talking about, specifically in healthcare, where throughput is one of the most important things in any healthcare space, and AI can help you do that more effectively, more safely, yet more quickly. It'd be absolutely mind-numbingly stupid not to start building that in, especially when you're a medtech company.
Yeah.
Moving on to that particular point. So if you are a medtech company today, where can founders most effectively, from your viewpoint, start to integrate AI from day one? Because obviously everyone knows about ChatGPT and taking data, but from your point of view, what we're talking about is building a medtech business. How do you build that in? Where would you see is the best place to start?
Yeah, I honestly think it needs to be like you said, integrated from day one. I think Shopify's CEO put out a really good like memo, like a letter to all employees, and he was like, it is an expectation that everybody leverage AI. We will be tracking your AI usage. We will be paying for the best AI tools that you'll have access to. You will be expected to prototype things always first using AI. And before you ask me to increase headcount or increase the budget on a project, you will be asked how you tried to use AI and why it won't work for that solution, the problem you're trying to solve. So I think, like, I would say to start, it needs to be a mentality and an expectation to a degree. And now, not every single person, that's a tech company, they make software, right? So not every single company or person in a company, doing Medtech, right, has to be an absolute wizard with AI. But I realistically think, like, it should, like Perplexity should be replacing Google. You know what I mean? For a lot of people, like, I always had, when managing people, I would be like, hey, did you Google this before you came into my office and asked me? Right? It should be like, hey, did you ask AI? Did you chat back and forth with AI about this before you kind of presented this problem or came into the office? Right. So I think that's kind of the cultural small way. But I think, I think kind of content, I would say content, but I almost want to say, like, hey, I need to write a company handbook or something, right? That is like something that would be so easy for AI to do, right? But if you were sat someone down and said, do this, it may take them like, a couple days to write a full handbook. It's like, hey, write me a handbook. Hey, write this, draft LOI agreement. Hey, write this, some, like, help us devise a marketing plan or what. Like, I think it needs to be, like, for anything that you're producing or creating. Think about it. Sometimes it's the first 50%, sometimes it's the first 80%, but, like, let it do a lot of the grunt work, and then you're refining and editing and polishing and expanding. But I think that's the way I would think about it, as like, and it's really, and I know that's maybe like a not satisfying answer, that it's like one specific thing or another specific, but it really is just like, I would say 80% of the stuff people do, they could take a big step, leapfrog to like a 50% or 80% mark on a project if they just leveraged AI from the start. And that's how I would recommend people think about it.
Well, I mean, and it's about changing your thinking and changing the environment in which you work, isn't it? Because even, I mean, I'm not going to say, my wife works for quite a large company in the UK, and they've got AI tools, but they only allow certain people to have them. And every time I say, "Oh, I'm using this great thing," she says, "Oh, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to, and we're not allowed to." And you're thinking, and you're a large technology company who could be absolutely smashing through a lot of the stuff you're asking people to do, but you're sort of like saying, well, no, there's only certain people who are allowed to use it, which is like in diametric opposite to what you were talking about Shopify. You just think, well, the Shopify model to me is the one that makes the most sense. And especially if you're in a small business where you don't have loads of money, you don't have loads of people to do stuff, you need to bleed as much as you can out of each person.
Well, and real quick, my mother-in-law, she works for, like, she does marketing for like a big like a bank, like a financial institution. And they have, like, the AI tools blocked, like, on their work computers. Like, they can't even access them. I was like, dude, I was like floored. I could not believe it. And I get, like, I think ChatGPT is, like, very, very good with security. I think people don't talk, you see all these metrics about AI, LLM performance against these, metrics and whatever. But I think one thing that OpenAI has done really well, and, like, you could argue it's like, well, it's closed source. That's a whole different debate, open source versus closed source. But I think the security and kind of the ownership of data, and them not training, the model off of, like, those types of data, and you kind of owning it, is really, really good. I think Anthropic does a good job, in Perplexity and all that stuff. But yeah, I think it's shooting yourself in the foot to restrict access to it. But there is a little bit of, real quick, sorry, this is going on a little bit, but like a Dunning-Kruger effect that I've seen, where, people will, like, kind of scratch the surface, or go a little bit deeper than scratch the surface and leveraging AI, but then it kind of gives them this, like, false sense of confidence, where, like, I was talking to a regulatory consultant the other day, and they were saying, these people will come in with these clearly AI generated X, Y, and Z. And they're like, yeah, can you just do this? Can you just, like, and they're like, this doesn't make sense. Or like a product development plan. It was actually a group that does, like, early stage product development, design, development, engineering. And they were like, they brought in and was like, yeah, can you do this? Can you make it work? And they were like, there's like 8 reasons why this won't work. Like, you clearly don't understand, like, the base source material. You just, like, asked it for what you wanted, and it kind of gave you an answer, and now you're telling us to bring it. So I think there's a little bit of a Dunning-Kruger effect, and, like, hopefully people continue to dig in, because, like, AI gets stuff wrong and it's not perfect. And so like, if you don't feel like you have a full understanding of like what's going on and like you're reading every single line of something that it's outputting, like you're doing it wrong. Like you have to like check everything that it outputs.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important actually because I think that's why you're not going to lose jobs in the way that people think you're going to lose because you still need experts. You can't get like for example, my daughter who's 17 couldn't go on AI and produce a business plan for my clients. She could put the name in and she could tell it to write a business plan and it'd write a business plan, but she would have no way of actually checking all of the things to say, well, is this correct? Is that right? Because the amount of times I go through AI, and I think what you said is really important because you mentioned having a conversation with AI, and that's exactly what it is. Because the amount of time that they've done some analysis to me, and I said, well, hang on, but that's not right, or you haven't taken this into consideration. She goes, oh, yes, you're exactly right. I should have thought about this. So you have to train it and you have to continually train it, just as you would if you were dealing with an individual. No one ever gets to a point where they have the sum of human knowledge in one place. And there's
Yeah.
always nuances that you need to take into account. So I think that's really important about understanding that you don't just put a prompt in and then say, all right, whatever it outputs, I'm going to now give that to somebody and we're all good to go because it's the quickest way to get fired.
No, and but real quick, prompt engineering, knowing how to spar with AI, knowing how to talk to it, how to like the things that are going to give you good results. It is one of the most important skills, I feel like. Like we should teach prompt engineering in primary school. Like really,
Yeah,
it's that important.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. So I want you to give me now some real world examples and real world use cases that you've seen where it's not just a buzzword. I mean, I gave an example earlier on, but things that you've seen that are actually driving clinical and commercial value. And actually, I mean, when we were talking earlier, you showed me that FDA submission. You might not want to go into that, but I thought that was a really good example
Yeah.
of how effective AI can be to reduce your workload by days.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dive in. I'm going to share my screen and we can just cook for a little while.
Yeah.
So I just pulled this up just now as we were talking about it, but like there's so many, this is schumerprompt.com. Literally just saw this the other day on Twitter, but it's basically kind of a library like GitHub for prompts. So if you want to maximize reasoning, you can just like paste this prompt right in there. People can contribute. So there's these kind of aggregation of these prompts as well. So it's not like you have to be like, you can kind of take a shortcut there. But let's start with Perplexity. So Perplexity AI, it's a great tool. It's completely replaced Google search for the most part for me. There's a kind of standard mode, and then there's like a deep research mode. So what I've done here is I haven't kind of hit this yet, but I basically said I run a medical device company focused on tendon repair of the shoulder. Help me find key opinion leader MDs that have published literature on this topic in the last 3 years from reputable journals, right, with a high impact factor, etc. With an emphasis on MDs in Europe, list the top 15 MDs you find with their practice locations and the research article they recently published underneath. So that's going to start cooking. This takes a while. It's deep research. It takes usually a couple minutes, but it will go through multiple sources. You can even see it thinking. It's really, really cool. So we're just going to let that run. We're going to come back to that. So this next one, right? So I took your logo, your picture, and I said, create me a square image that promotes my, healthcare accelerator program, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure all the words. And the other thing I want to show you to help that one get going, you can say, this is Ask Steve. So this is a plugin. So you can say, write me a one paragraph summary of the healthcare export accelerator program.
Now, just to let everybody know, this is completely unscripted because I had no idea that that Spencer was going to be using me as his guinea pig.
Yes. So now I'm going to come back over here and say, make sure all the words are spelled correctly. Use the branding. A paragraph summary of the. Okay. And you want to make sure you're using the ChatGPT 4.0 model. That's the image gen model. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So let that cook. So we're going to come back over here. It says it takes up to 30 minutes. It's not going to take that long, but you can see it's searching. It's going through different things there. So this one's creating the image. It'll give you 2 responses. So this should be, but while we're waiting on that one to load, so Ask Steve, it's like a really interesting Chrome extension and plugin. You can chat with anything on the page, and then there's a ton of stuff you can do with it. You guys should check it out. I know the guy that founded it. He's like an ex-Google engineer, and he's like a wizard. So so it's going to give me 2 responses here. Let me check back to see if Perplexity. And by the way, this is like one of the ways I really like to cook with AI, where you're going back and forth between, you're using one LLM, or I'm using Ask Steve, which is an AI tool, to help me generate a summary of a page that I then take over to ChatGPT to help me generate an image, right? Right. So this is, creating these images. You can say, yeah, I like this one better. I like this one better, but I want you to change it in this way. I want you to add this. I want you to add this. And then you can drop this into Canva, right? Pretty neat. Pretty neat. So you can drop this into Canva, and you could say, okay, yeah, I really like this. And then you can grab the image and then replace it with your actual headshot if you want it to look a little bit better. So anyways, great for that. That's just one example. Let's see if this is still cooking. Yep. So while we're waiting on that one, I'm going to show you this one. So this is Claude .ai. This is Anthropic's large language model. So this is an application for regulatory. I took a business plan, right? Kind of 5-year business plan, whatever. And I said, draft me an FDA style intended use statement for this device, right? And so it gives me this. I said, actually, let's make it less than 500 characters, etc. And then I also went and found on the FDA website a de novo and a 510K summary. You can download these. You can find them on the FDA's database website, right? And then I said, so I took this intended use statement. I used that to kind of help me find the product code, etc. Find these. Then I said, create me a full 510K class 2 document styled in similar format to these documents that will serve as a comprehensive submission type document for my device that I can take to a regulatory consultant or a regulatory strategy. So it produced all of this, right? So it's got the device description, indications for use, intended use. Here's the table of this, kind of our device, predicate, and rationale for substantial equivalence that goes all the way through all the specs, biocompatibility, sterilization, electrical and electromagnetic compatibility, bench testing, animal testing requirements, usability. And again, some of this will be wrong, right? Some of this won't be right. But to be able to get this and at least have it be a starting point and say, what's wrong with this, right? How do we improve this? And then I even took that and said, make me a testing and requirements and budget document. And it said, hey, here's the testing that I think you're going to have to do. And then it gave me a budget for it. Here's a range for the budget. Here's the total range. And here's the timeline, right? So in a matter of minutes, you can go from just hey, we've got a business plan to, okay, now we've got a pretty good regulatory intended use statement, and then use that to find some stuff, get almost a submission document ready, right? And a summary, and then get a testing roadmap, right? So, okay. So now we've got, so this is, again, just, I know we're flipping back and forth. This is Perplexity. We asked it to find us some key opinion leaders. Okay. So it's fine. So we found some European specialists, recent clinical findings, market technology developments, factors influencing, recommendation for further research. So it only gave me one, it looks like, which is okay. But one thing that's nice, you can click on the citation and you can see, it looks like he's a pretty prominent shoulder doc in the space. But if I was doing this, for real, I would just be hey, you only gave me one, focus on, make sure you give me this list of a full list of 15, etc. So again, this is a great example of it doesn't always work exactly like you want it to, right? I may have asked it to do a little bit too much, right?
But as you said, it's about the prompts, isn't it? It's about then having that chat with the AI, so that actually you then, as you just said there, you'd say, well, actually, you've only given me one. Can you give me another however many? And I'm doing that and I think one of the most important things that I'm taking from this, because I do this, is I thought it was only me who did it. I've always got about 15 tabs open, and you're asking one AI model one thing, then you're copying and pasting that into another AI model, because they all are better at certain things than others. So my advice and I don't know about you, but I would always say, don't think that getting ChatGPT and that's the only thing you've got. It is you now getting into the AI space, because there's so many other things that if you're really trying to run a business, and we're talking about here about building a medtech business from the ground up, then you're going to need more than one AI engine. You can't just stick with one. That's my humble opinion from what I can see.
Mm-hmm. No, it's you can spend all the money you want, but there's most of them that are either free or the free version works well enough.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, 100%. I want to show. I don't know if this is like running yet. Let's see. I'm gonna give that a second to load. So, but another one that I wanted to show you guys. So this is medtechvendors.com. This is an Exo Medtech product. So like full disclosure, but we're using some AI. You can come in and do a natural language search. We'll match you with vendors. So part of that natural language processing, we're using AI and then bouncing it against a vendor database. But then we're able to, you can come in and say exactly what you're looking for. And then we can give you a percentage match based on the query. And you can even filter further. But part of this too, we built a free tool that's specific for AI. So you can come in and say the name of your technology, basic description, key features, and that intended use statement, right? Like we had Claude help us, right? So you can say put your intended use statement in, and then it will spit out a report that is really, really good. So it has like, to get this out of Claude, it would take multiple back and forths, really long prompts, refining. So we basically did all of that on the back end, 3,000 words of prompts in different sequences to like help generate a report that has regulatory stuff, mechanical testing, biologic, manufacturing, critical dimension engineering. And this is free to use. This is completely free to use for people. So, okay, I don't think it started building it. So this is the last one, and then I'll turn it back over. Hakeem, sorry, I know I'm taking up. Yeah. So this is Vercel V0. It's a low-code, no-code dev tool. So I just took a screenshot of an ROI estimator tool that I had created. And I said, build me an ROI calculator for my orthopedic spine startup. Use sliders, follow the color palette and flow of the ROI estimator attached. A few fields should be editable, highlighted in the screenshot.
So just as you're doing that, can you just explain to people what low code, no code means?
Yeah, low code, no code, and you'll kind of see it work here in a second. So what it is basically AI is so good at writing code, it can take in natural language. They call it vibe coding. It can take in natural language about what you're wanting to do, and then it can take like a small amount of instructions and then start developing, start coding, putting the architecture together, creating different like file structures for, like in this instance, a web application. So it is writing all of this code right now. It's just cooking on it, right? And it's doing aesthetic stuff, front end design, back end design, logic, all of that stuff, just like as we're talking. You know what I mean? So this is, whenever we were talking about like, the ability for like smart, solutions to come in and have a big impact on a healthcare system or whatever, I also think one of the big ways AI is going to change things is the ability for very, very small teams to launch and deploy digital solutions, or even like digital products, or even like micro SaaS products that can accompany their traditional hardware med tech, that just like make people's lives easier. You know what I mean? Their customers, their stakeholders, their champions, things that they can use and leverage that may be to a degree free, right? It just goes along with you buying our device product. But if it costs somebody, a weekend or 30 hours to build and deploy an application, right? So this is now an interactive ROI estimator tool that I could send to a customer. So instead of them just getting a spreadsheet or a static PDF, they can adjust things based on the OR cost per minute feature numbers that they have, their existing number of spine surgeons and number of cases per year. And what it's going to do every time you're changing things, it's impacting the ROI, their sterile processing spend cost, OR time cost, and it's pushing through. So this was one shot. That's what they call it. One shot it. And so all of this, I know that was like a big, whirlwind, but all of this this is how I'm using it. This is how I think people should be using it, because we literally in what was that? Maybe 12, 15 minutes, we created a custom ROI calculator tool, an FDA submission, FDA 510K submission document, intended use statement, design and development project plan and cost estimate with timelines, found some KOL surgeons, created an ad graphic, and what else? I don't know. But that in that short period of time, just using these tools.
No, no, and I think that's certainly how I've been using it, similar to yourself. I've got a couple of digital products coming out specifically based on the fact you can do low code, no code, things that would have in the past cost me more than tens of thousands of pounds to get a developer to do and then to maintain and all that sort of stuff. So you start it and then you think, actually, it's going to be very costly, so you stop it. So there's lots of things that you can do. And actually, I think I might have mentioned it. I can't remember where I've mentioned it to. But I remember having this conversation with one of my friends who's an MD of a construction company, who's very deep into AI and all that sort of stuff. And I remember in the early days we were talking about, and we were talking exactly about, well, are people going to lose jobs? Is it cheating? And he said, no. He said, all it does is supercharge your brilliance. And I think that was the best description I could think about, because the amount I can get done in a day now is absolutely ridiculous, to be honest. The amount of work you can get through in like 2 or 3 hours that used to take you days, which then means my clients get a much better version of me and a lot more productivity, because I can do things much more quickly and in more depth than I would have done it, because it had taken me so long to do it. So I think to me, it's a game changer for my business, and it should be a game changer for anyone who's listening if they take on board exactly what you've just gone through.
Yeah, no, for sure. You bring up a good point though. Like, I think, consultants will deal with this, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm going to start using AI to do some of this stuff. And like, if I would have not used AI, this may have taken me 6 hours, but this only took me 2.5 hours that I use AI. So what do I build? What do I bill the client, right? How do I mark those hours up? Like, I always basically just say, like, market true to form, market at 2.5 hours, or maybe just round up to 3. But don't, like, I think you should be and this is for consultants or anybody, be transparent about, like, don't shy away from the fact that you're like using AI. Like, people in medtech are so bad about like trying to be like, oh, well, I can't tell them how I did what I did because it's my secret sauce or whatever. It's like, that's the opposite mentality you should have. So like, I talk about how much I use AI all the time. And if people are like, oh, well, you used AI to do that, and it's like, yeah, you used Microsoft Word, a word processor. You didn't get your quill and ink pen out and write this. You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about here? It's a tool. It's all about how you use tools, right? So anyways, that's one of my takes on that, is just don't shy away from it. Like, own it.
No, and I think you're right, because if I said, right, I'm doing a search, let's say I'm doing a distributor search, and I've got a team of 5 who are looking at it, everybody would say, oh, brilliant. If I say, well, I've got AI to do it, obviously I then check it, and there's obviously lots of things that I have to put the right prompts in. Why would you be bothered? All you're interested in is, what's the outcome? Is the outcome good quality? And if you know what you're doing with AI, the outcome will be very, very good quality.
That's it. I mean, that's it. They should care about the outcome. And there is a massive benefit. I mean, how much would that team of 5 cost versus, right? And so outcome versus cost to achieve that outcome, it's pretty much a no-brainer.
No, it is. And so in terms of, the people getting started with AI, what mistakes have you seen people using or doing when they're trying to get AI into their solutions in some way, shape, or form? Because obviously, as we just discussed, you can do it in the right way. What would be described as the wrong way?
Yeah. No, I think like, not understanding, like, I think there should be, when you're starting to use it and you're starting to get into it, even if it's just like an hour, like, take the time to try to like really understand like LLMs and like the differences in models and like basic concepts like reasoning models, image gen models, you know what I mean? Voice models, like how, because like even within ChatGPT, there's 4.0, 3.0 mini, 3.0 mini high, and they all have really different like kind of characteristics, and like based on the things that you're needing done, some are better than others. Some I like Claude for creative writing, 3.7 sonnet, that model, right? But if it's more idea based writing, I like ChatGPT 4.5. But like, you really have to kind of just get into it and kind of understand, because like, you could imagine where it's like someone tries to use it and they're not using the right model or the right platform, and they're not happy with the result, and they're like, this is crap, right? And they didn't prompt it well. So I think like understanding the models, just even like a surface level, is really, really helpful. And then I think like people think it's like a vending machine. They'll just like put the quarter in and they're like, oh, well, that's not what I wanted. And then they just walk away. And it's like, no, like, talk to it. And you don't have to talk to it like a human, though. You can be like, no, that was crap. Like, do it again, do it again, do it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there is like a bit of an art form to kind of the prompting and the sparring. I think sparring is key. Like, don't just like accept. People will just like be like, especially when they're pleased with the result, they'll be like, oh, this was good. And then they'll take it and then they'll, kind of leave the scene. And it's like, no. Like, dig deeper. Ask it to go deeper. Ask it to redo it and go, change how it did it or whatever. Like, I think that's another big thing. People will just kind of like take the first thing it gives them and be like, look what I got. Look what I did. And it's like, no, keep going. Dig deeper.
Yeah, no, I think that's some really, really good advice. And just in terms of medtech and the healthcare space, we are traditionally, because it's a highly regulated environment, we're traditionally very slow to do anything, especially digitally. So how would you say you can balance that and get around that in terms of in medtech inventors and medtech companies' minds, where they're thinking, oh my God, I don't even do social media, and now you want me to start integrating AI into my whole process? How do you get across that?
Yeah. I mean, that's $1 million question. There is such a mindset shift that needs to take place with kind of med tech, from the capital side to the mid-tier company to healthcare institutions, all the way to early stage innovators. But like with those, pre-seed to Series A innovators, like I would just, I think I think just getting it out there and doing it. Like, that's honestly, I'm trying to kind of like show what I'm building, show it at the halfway point, ask people what they think, doing things in the open. I think that's kind of what we are trying to do with Exo MedTech, right? This community, this safe space where people can like build, try things, fail, succeed, all in the open, and everybody can benefit from seeing that process. But it's a huge, I don't know that I have a perfect answer. It's like the mindset shift of like, well, this is a new thing. I don't know if I want to tackle it. But I think the mindset shift of like people just like being so siloed, and it's like, oh, I'm in stealth mode, I can't talk about what I'm doing, or resistant to change. Like, people talk about like, oh, healthcare is resistant to change. I'm like, dude, a lot of you are resistant to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're like throwing stones in a glass house here because you're like afraid to try anything new, or think you kind of already know everything that you need to know to take your med tech thing to the moon. And it's like, dude, it's a constant process of learning. And I think it comes with the territory of having like highly skilled, highly educated and trained people, whether it's in biomechanics or mechanical engineering or even clinicians and surgeons. I think it's like they reach a point where they feel like they know what they need to know. And like that kind of like flame for learning and innovating outside of their product gets turned off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, and there's no, as you said, it is the holy grail question, because just even anything digital, if you're talking about online stuff or social media or LinkedIn, they're like, it's like a burning cross. No, absolutely no chance of we doing anything like that, because it's highly regulated. But you're talking about communicating, so you communicate with people face to face, don't you? You just put the same parameters on that you'd put on a face to face conversation.
Yeah, and and I think a lot of the founding teams, whatever, they're clinicians, they're surgeons, they're mechanical engineers, they're chemical engineers, right? They didn't take any marketing classes. Like, they don't do it naturally. So it is absolutely out of their comfort zone for them to try to do it. But like, that is where you really kind of level up your, give yourself an X factor. It's like, oh, I'm a mechanical engineer, but I also can do graphic design.
Yeah.
Or I'm a biomedical engineer, but I know how to like, create content that really tickles the algorithm, right? Like, those are the types of people that I want to hire, right? Like, I don't want people that are completely one track minded, a key with one tooth, right? I want really versatile athletes on my team. And like, how do you do that without getting out of your comfort zone? You can't.
No, you can't. And I think hopefully entrepreneurs tend to have more of that mindset. But as you said, a lot of type people in the medtech space, even though you'd say they're entrepreneurs, but they are engineers, clinicians, and it is really trying to drag them out. And I've met some great people who are actually exactly as we're describing, but I've probably met on balance more of the former, i.e., well, yeah, but I'm a doctor and I don't do that sort of stuff. And you're thinking, well, if you want to run a business, you're gonna have to start. I mean, I can help you, but you're gonna have to start doing some of it yourself. I can't do it all for you because it's your business and you need your voice as well as an engine behind you. So is an interest. I can't believe 40 minutes have already gone.
Yeah.
No
Well,
idea.
I know. Well, I'll say this too. Like, I think this probably happens with like lots of entrepreneurs, not in medtech, but I think in medtech too, like there's a lot of like idea fixation, and I think it captures people early where they get so like kind of bought in and like obsessed with the idea and like not as obsessed with the problem they're solving and the journey ahead of them and the different skills and like the regulatory and the reimbursement and the market access and the sales and distribution and the value chain for all the stakeholders. And they're like, but yeah, my thing is awesome and it works. And it's like, you haven't made it yet. You know what I mean? It's never touched a patient. You don't know if it will. You don't understand the problem yourself. Like, but they're only focused on the idea and then modeling a 5x revenue exit that's going to happen in 3 years. And it's like, it's just, they're focused on those two things. It's like, oh, my product's great. It's an amazing idea. And we're going to sell it for 50 million in 3.5 years. And it's like, no. But anyways, but it's that idea fixation, I think, that you see a lot, you know what I mean? Which I think is, it's like, it's great to be excited about your idea. You need to be more excited and engaged with learning the process, and not, like you said, like, oh, well, we'll hire someone to do that. We'll contract with someone to do that. It's like, that's the wrong approach.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and it's amazing how many companies seem to have been to the same person who's told them that you'll get 5x within three to 3.5 years. I mean, it's just always the same thing. You're thinking, right? I think I've seen that before somewhere.
Yeah.
Every single time, it's, yeah, we want to sell out of this, and we're going to get that. We're going to do that. I don't think you are, because there's about
Yeah.
100 million steps that you have to take before, as he said, before you've even launched a product. Never mind start talking and getting excited about doing that. And I always try to tell people, yes, that can happen, but it's not a regular occurrence that people are launching medical devices and selling it for 50 million in 3 to 5 years. It's more of a rarity because you have to get through those steps that you actually got a business first before you start even worrying about selling that business. You have to build a business. You have to make sure that you're successful in doing the basics of a medtech business before you start worrying about that. And actually, if you do the right thing, which is what I always tell people, everything else will take care of itself. But
Yeah.
if your 100% focus is X in 3.5 years, you'll make some very stupid decisions, which will probably kill your business, actually.
Oh, for sure. And like, yeah, and I think that mindset also like makes people resistant to, like, if they need to pivot or if they need to, like, hey, maybe like the Gen 1 version is like, we really need to make some changes, and like the
Yeah,
Gen 2 version, like I saw some data and it was like the actual like average like time to exit or whatever for medtech companies that get acquired is 11 years. It's like 10 to 11 years.
yeah,
And people think it's like 3 to 5, and it's not. And then the other thing I saw was like, it's typically like the third generation of the product that gets acquired.
yeah,
So like, I think you should just be thinking about that and budgeting for it and planning for it. And like, it's like, to a degree, it's like, yeah, your original baby was ugly and you need to change it. And then you'll probably change that one again after
yeah.
that. And it's like, but when you're obsessed with the idea and you think it's like, you're going to take it to the moon, it's just hard to do that.
No, it is, and I understand that when it's conceived in your mind and cradled, just like a baby, it's very difficult to say that your baby's ugly.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
so finishing off, if you had to give one bold prediction, at the beginning we talked about, where do you think it's going, but if you were to give one bold prediction about AI in medtech, something that may seem crazy today, but could be true in 5 years, what would that be?
Man, I'm going to do one that is but maybe bold and hopeful. You know what I mean? Aspirational. But, I think I think we will see a pretty significant disruption in kind of two, I almost view them as like interconnected, but GPOs and PBMs and insurance and prior authorizations, right? I think those kind of sectors are like so ripe for disruption. Specifically, let's just take like GPOs, right? If GPOs didn't exist and we found ourselves in today's landscape and these hospitals are like, yeah, I've got to source 10,000 different SKUs from 1,000 different companies and managing the pricing and the contracts and all of that. It's just a huge, bear, right? And they were having this problem and AI existed. It would be like, oh yeah, let's just build a solution that can like, automate a lot of this, use agents to do a lot of this, right? Because it's a lot of like product lifecycle management, bidding out contracts, like reviewing material, sourcing pricing, like reviewing pricing, like establishing contracts and holding to price. Like it's a lot of that stuff. None of that's that hard with AI. But yet every dollar that gets, every medtech company that's selling into a hospital is paying that GPO 3%. And then the hospitals are usually paying 2 to 3%. So there's like this like 6% inflationary effect on the healthcare system, which is billions, probably trillions globally, but like billions in the US. And it doesn't need to be that. Like you could, so I think that's like one example of like these industries that have kind of like supplanted themselves. I would say entrenched themselves and are huge and control spend and dollars and contracts and things. Like, I think there could be some significant disruption in like prior authorizations. Like, I think probably the insurance companies are using AI to decline them. But like, what if we got to a point where it was like, hey, we have, we can prove with a 99.9% objective certainty that this prior authorization request is 99% similar, 99.9% similar to these other ones that you approved, right? How can they say, well, we're going to deny it, right? And how can they say we're going to drag this out for 30 days if you have the proof, right? So I think like there's just areas like that where I'm like, this is going to come to a head because, this kind of like money management racket that insurance companies play with denying prior authorization requests, it's kind of, everyone knows it's a scam. And now it's like, well, what do we do about it? And now I think AI can like deliver tools and solutions that like basically neuter their ability to hide behind a curtain of like, oh, well, it's not needed care or we denied it for this reason. So
I think you're right. I think there's lots of areas like that where people know something's going on that's not right, but it's actually just too difficult to pull the curtain back and actually wrestle the elephant. Whereas that's exactly what AI is brilliant at doing, is actually taking that difficult task and saying, oh, leave it to me, I'll do it in 5 minutes, in fact. And I'll build a tool for you as well that'll allow you to track it. So I completely agree. So thank you very much for that, Spencer. As I said on the first time you were on, there's so much, we could be here for about 5 hours to be honest. So I'm going to have to get you back on to talk about a bit more, because I really like what we talked about there. And those tools really are, I'm hoping people who watch this and listen to this will realise actually AI is nothing to be feared. AI should and will be definitely at some point your friend and your partner in your business that's really going to help you take you to the next level. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on. I can't wait to get back.
So it was great to have Spencer on the show again, giving significant value as he did on the last one. This time we were talking about AI, and I think one of my biggest requests to everybody is, if you normally digest your podcast and this podcast on an audio platform, make sure you go and check out the YouTube video, or you can actually watch the video on Spotify as well, because I think when you actually see him going through those tools, it's much better to see it visually than when you're just listening to what happened. But I'll drop the link to all those tools in the description and go and have a play. But if you are in medtech and you're not using AI, then hopefully this podcast and this episode has convinced you why maybe you should be.